first and foremost, what'd you guys think of the film, right? This has been, I know, I think you have a mic too if you want to, somewhere behind you. Yeah, that's not a roll of shirts, that's a microphone, okay.
Thank you, Pat.
Welcome, okay. I know this has been such a passion project and you've been working on it, so maybe talk about just are you at that point where it's a kind of a sigh of relief? Because yeah. So maybe take us through the process and how it's felt on multiple levels for you.
Well, I done Step into Liquid and Dust to Glory and movie High Water, which is at North Shore. Yeah. We hung out. Yeah. And I just want to do something smaller, like Mom had died, and I was like, we should shoot this, and we filmed a bunch of footage. And then other bigger projects came up, and I never got around to finishing it. And Dad would always go, "Hey, what the fuck's going on with that, that film?"
So you got a little nudge, a little poke.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. That's why Dick's upset. I mean, you can see it with Grubby and Dad. I mean, that's
by the way, Abbott and Costello have nothing on. What I would pay to see. Your dad and Grubby on like just a sidekick movie. Yeah. Oh my gosh, the dynamic between those two. It's like
all of them. I mean, and Dick and anyway. So years have gone by, and I finished the sequel to Dust to Glory, and literally, he's like, "Well, you got to finish my thing," and I was going like, "I'm trying to figure this out because I'm trying to figure out what it is," and he passed away. Anyways. Not to get in, he broke his hip and they couldn't operate on him, and damn, he's gone. And all this shit that goes on. And SCS, which is right out in Irvine, they said, "Hey, you got to move." They called and said you should do something. Dana, a buddy of mine that knows them, you should do another film. You're mourning too much. Do you have anything that's kind of slightly done? And I went, yeah, actually I have this one thing, but I didn't have an ending. And so it became, instead of I could tell his life story. So, yeah, I feel really fortunate. And I want to mention one thing. I mentioned this to my daughter who I drove down with tonight, Ellie, who's grinning right there. She has teeth not quite as big as mine, but she has big teeth.
Duly noted.
She's much prettier than I am, by the way. I want to mention Luke Sturtz, who was the young editor that worked at SCS. And I went in and I was like, I don't know, I got to do this myself. And I met Luke. And so much of that was Luke, like just figuring it out and making me go more, because I kept thinking, like, who the fuck cares about
well, I'm sure you're so close to it.
Shit,
you're so close to it.
Yeah.
And there's obviously, there's some parts that were really probably difficult.
Yeah.
Right?
And I figured they reflected everybody's life with their parents, But then if somebody went, "Oh, yeah, you lived a cool life and your dad did this," you'd go like, okay, who the hell cares about that? But, yeah. So thank you, Luke. He's not
the editors. They're the thankless. Yeah. Oh, there you go.
You're right there,
oh,
wearing his mask.
Round of applause for you guys that spend countless hours going through stuff, finding those little moments.
But I really want to thank Luke, because we sat in the edit room a lot, and I kept, we kept going through these things. The Henry Priest thing that ends it, and Henry meant so much to Dad, but Henry's like the least sexy. Well, he's very sexy. You could hear his voice. He's a very good voice. But, I was like, that meant a lot. And it was like, no, this is your dad's thing, and it would relate to everybody. So anyways, and Luke's all of 20, what are you, 19 or what's going on? He's young. So that was good, too, because old guys, which I see a few of you out here, all of us go like, "Oh, yeah, that's the coolest thing ever," in the summer. And then young people are like, "I don't know what you're talking about," So you wanted to make sure it worked, and the fact it worked for him, it meant a lot to me.
I mean, I don't know. I would say that I think a lot of like Gen Z millennials. I mean, I think they're pretty in tune. There's such a timeless aspect of what your father did, and I love that you touched and you did also the equal deep dive on Any Sunday, because I think sometimes there was always a lot of focus on Any Sunday in its own right, like just a bona fide. It left such an indelible mark. I want to get Troy's insight here, because what was when on Any Sunday came out, how did it impact you? And you're like, okay, is this thing going to resonate?
Is this thing working?
Yeah, it is. It is.
No, it changed my life. I mean, it was one of the coolest movies I've when I saw it, I fell in love with motorcycles and started racing and painting my own helmets. My dad was an artist, and but it was and I fell in love with the characters in there too. Mert and Malcolm Smith,
and he made it so approachable. That's what I mean. Like when we see so much stuff now, whether it be any aspect of action sports and moto side, it seems unattainable. But there was approachability, right?
Oh yeah,
with that film.
So many different genres, and just guys out there riding in the desert and playing, and just had such a good, cool soul feeling to it. People racing across the desert and picking up a turtle, and just living in the back of the truck, and living in their vans and traveling across the country. And it's really when motorcycles started, and it was showing a whole other aspect of not just a bunch of bikers or Hell's Angels out there. These guys were racers making a living at it, and it was cool to see the real professional side of it.
What I'd give for some of those, like the retro P50s that I saw, right? You want those old bikes. But so was that the spark for you, where it truly started?
Yeah, for sure. It definitely.
That's huge.
I saw that movie, and all I wanted to do was ride after that. It was really cool.
I gotta say, but on Any Sunday, like with the surf community, you did it with surfing, but literally motorcycling. Ricky Johnson, I run into so many people that go, well, it was on Any Sunday that did it. To this day, I mean, even more than, and motorcycling is bigger than surfing. Not where we're at right now. So apologies to the ranch, but overall, universally, it's bigger, and it is incredible. You could be in Spain and people are like, "Oh my Lord," it's something else. Yeah.
So I want to ask Dick. I feel like I could talk 4 hours here tonight, and everyone would be better for it. But just in terms of maybe a favorite, I mean, you've got so many stories you can dive in. But with Bruce and early days, and so I'm going to just give you free reign. I find this works best with you, Dick.
You don't want me to talk all night. You get me started. But this was really emotional for me because Bruce and Hobie and Pat, the whole lineup there were all my best friends, and they're all gone now. It's emotional. It's heartbreaking because we did have so much fun. And we were fortunate in that surfing was just beginning and motorcycling. And I think back of the times I took, and I don't know if you know that, Dana, but Walter Hoffman, Rennie Yater, myself, and your dad, we rode the Colorado 500. I call it the Bloody Dick Ride.
Of course you do.
What year was it?
Oh, God, I don't know. It had to be 15 years ago. But I'd ridden the Colorado 500 out a bunch of times, so I knew the way, and we didn't want to go with 500 people. So I said, well, the four of us will go. And we all drove and met in Crested Butte, and then we took off. But it was the Bloody Dick Ride because everybody was bloody one way or another. And we had a great time, though. But it's just the camaraderie and the lifestyle that we lived in both surfing. I just rode my motorcycle. I have a new KTM 500 I rode yesterday.
Is this out in Idaho?
Yeah.
Wow. Look at you.
So that was a whole nother life. But Bruce and Hobie and most of the guys you talked about were so creative because we'd lay on the beach and be talking about, I was older than all of them, so I was going to college when they were still in high school. And, I'm just, what am I going to do when we get older and got to go to work? And they kept creating. I couldn't create anything, but I was pretty good with numbers, so I kind of put everything together. But it was just a great life because everybody was so concerned about how we were going to play and have so much fun together. I mean, chasing girls, motorcycles, surfboards. I mean, that was Hobie Cats. That's been my life for the 90 years that I've been living in Laguna.
I feel like we're birds of a feather. I know. I wish. I want to. If there's a condensed way to do this, because I know it's a very long. I know with Richard's film of just in terms of like discovering Cape St. Francis, but I love the backstory of how you had to, you left Laguna to get to Tahiti, which then it led to Africa. Maybe you could share that in a way that you guys. I mean, it's an incredible story, and not to mention your stories with Peanuts and like everything in Laguna. Like I hear stories that just like that. There's no way life was like that here in Southern California.
Well, see, that's the way the Endless Summer came about. Actually, I just was there with Richard Yalen, who was here earlier. Last summer, we went back to Africa and filmed. I've been there 10 or 12 times. And in 1958, I was tending bar at the Sandpiper. Most of you know that place.
Dirty Bird for those in the know.
I was tending bar there, I think before Chuck was even born. And I lived in the apartments right behind it on Brook Street. So Brook Street was my home turf. And I decided I wanted an adventure. So I left Laguna hitchhiking in front of the Sandpiper, right down the Coast Highway to Mexico. And before I left, everybody was going to go with Hobie, and all the guys were going to go. And I said, well, before we go, we've got to get visas, and you got to get shots to get the visas. So I had to go to L.A. Once a week and get yellow fever and bubonic plague and all these weird diseases. And pretty soon I noticed that nobody was getting their shots, so I knew they weren't going to go. Originally, there was going to be about 10 of us. And so none of them showed up the day I started hitchhiking. So I was by myself. And it took me 3 years. So I hitchhiked around the world over a little over 3 years, came back to Laguna, and that's when we had a party at Hobie's house. Bruce was there and Grubby and all the guys, and I showed him all my pictures where I'd surfed in Africa. And finally, I kept telling Bruce, you got to go down, because in those days, he just made movies in Hawaii and Mexico. That's all as far as you went. And I thought, God, there's got to be surf on all of these other parts of the world. So, I literally hitchhiked. I didn't fly.
What year was this? I want to just
left in 58 and came back in
so 58, he's
61.
hitchhiking down, and then the only way to Tahiti then was, didn't you have to board a frigate?
Was what?
To get to Tahiti on your route there. This is what I remember.
Well, I didn't know how I was going to do any of this. In those days, there was no Surfer magazine. There was no phones. You couldn't phone, other countries. And Hez McLennan, another old Laguna guy that some of you might remember, he and I both had the Spigot liquor store. And we were reading Argosy and True magazines, were adventure magazines about some kind of little truth in it, but they jazzed it up and got us all fired up. So Hez was another guy who was going to go with me. So we learned in reading these magazines that you could get jobs on ships in different places. And so the only way you could go to Tahiti, there's no airport in Tahiti in those days. There was Quinn's Bar, and that's where we all wanted to go. Topless girls in Quinn's Bar. How can you beat that? So
wow, I can smell the the spiced rum from here.
Before I left, there was 5 places I wanted to go. I didn't know how I was going to get to any of them. Quinn's Bar, Tahiti. I wanted to go to Australia because I knew there had to be surf there. I wanted to go to Africa and see wild animals, a lot of wild women and tribes and whatever. And I knew there had to be surf in Africa somewhere. And I wanted to run with the bulls in Pamplona, Spain. And I wanted to go to the Olympic Games in Rome in 1960. So I didn't know how I was going to get to any of them. But I knew the only way to get to Tahiti, it was either on a sailboat, which I couldn't find any sailboats that would take me, but the French were fighting the French Indochina War, which later became our Vietnam War, and they were sending French Foreign Legionnaire troops from Marseille, France, through the Panama Canal, stopping at Tahiti because that was a French possession, and then going on to Vietnam. So I learned if you got to Panama, you could pay for wine and rice and French bread, $60 for a 7-day trip to Tahiti. So I rode on a French Army troop ship from Panama to Papeete.
We talk about, we think, we're, speaking with Jeff Johnson and Chris Burkhardt and like these crazy adventures. This is on another level. Yeah. You can't.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear these other guys and great stories and adventures that they've had. I wanted to stay first in warm climates because I didn't want to take a lot of clothes because it's all on my back. I've got a little rucksack for 3 years. So I had to travel light. I didn't take a surfboard, but I figured I knew how to make them. I could make surfboards. So, I hitchhiked to Panama. I'd gone to graduate school in Mexico City. I had the GI Bill in the Korean War. So I already knew Mexico and Guatemala. So I didn't hesitate. I just wanted to get to Panama. So I spent about 2 weeks in Panama waiting for the French Army troop ship to come by. I got on that and sailed to Tahiti. Spent about 3 months in Papeete and the other islands, Raiatea, Huahine, and Bora Bora, and I surfed there a little bit, and then went on, got a Norwegian freighter I worked on from Tahiti to Samoa, Pago Pago, New Hebrides, all the way across the Pacific to Australia, where I spent another 3 or 4 months surfing up and down the coast. And nobody was surfing in Australia then. There was maybe a few, but I didn't have a camera except a little box camera.
Yeah, I don't believe any of these stories without a camera.
Yeah, you want to fact check?
So,
Okay.
Pretty sure Metz just showed up and made this shit up. I got to say one thing. Dad would always say, if it wasn't for Metz coming back, telling those stories, he'd been to Australia, but that was after you came back with Phil. And then, but the whole endless summer thing, he always went, well, Metz did it, so I can do it. I mean, he's kind of an idiot.
Well,
no, I don't mean he thought Metz was an idiot. I mean how you think of your friends. Like your friend comes and goes, hey, guess what I did? And you go, well, I can do that, right? If Stephen Hawking says, guess what I figured out? You go like, yeah, I probably can't figure that
Well,
out.
it's Dick.
well, it did. I had to twist his arm though. When I came home in 1961, he didn't leave till 63 or 4, so it wasn't a big hurry-up deal.
So Cape St. Francis just sat empty
But
until
we had a party at Hobie's house, and I showed little slides of where I'd been, and we blew them up on a little screen. But where I'd surfed all over Africa, and I met John Whitmore. And so because I stayed in Australia and South Africa, well, all over Africa, I was in Africa alone 1.5 years. So I knew my way around. I knew people. So when I gave Bruce John Whitmore's phone number, and we wrote him, and in the meantime, I brought John over here because John was selling used
Pat
cars.
knows
this was networking before LinkedIn. This is how things worked back then, right?
Well, everything took longer. It was a different world. The way we didn't have computers and phones and all that stuff. So it's come a long way since then. And it was a great trip. And I went back. Well, I showed John Whitmore was selling used cars. And I told him about all this stuff. We'd lay on the beach day after day and talk about surfing and Hobie and Bruce and all the stuff we were doing. And they didn't know about any of this. And so I said, well, when I get home, I'll send you stuff. So I got home, like after I left Cape Town, I didn't get home for another 2 years. And he thought I'd died or something along the way. But finally I got home and I got a container full of resin and some of Grubby's blanks. See, when I left, I worked for Grubby. Well, it was really Hobie's foam, and then he gave it to Grubby, and that's a whole nother story. We had the secret spot in the canyon, and Hobie and I were making surfboards at Dana Point, but Hobie lived on Pearl Street, right across the street from my dad, and so my sisters babysat all the Hobie kids, and at night Hobie had a little chemistry set, and he was playing with all this foam and chemistry to make foam, and he poured it in a little quart. He bought a case of quart that you'd have ice cream in, little cardboard containers. And so every night he'd makes up a different batch. He'd write on it the date and what he put in it. And the Hobie store in Dana Point, the only store we had at that time, was a flat roof, and he'd put all these canisters on the roof to see what the sun, how it was affecting the foam. Some would turn black, some would get red, and some would stay white. And so Hobie would go up every day on the roof with a clipboard and monitor.
He was that meticulous.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible.
And so he really, Grubby was going to Pomona College. So Hobie really designed the foam, but it wasn't perfect by a long shot, and we couldn't figure out what was wrong because during the day, the temperature and the humidity would change. Hobie made 2 big molds out of concrete and steel, and they weighed a ton to keep the lid on it, because we'd fire off the foam in there and it would go off and it'd start to lift the lid. So we had to, or Hobie did, I say we, Hobie did everything. I just watched. But he would put big clamps on it so the lid wouldn't come up and it would condense the foam. At first it was more like styrofoam, bigger cells, and we kept getting it littler and littler, but by the time we had poured the liquid in the mold, it wouldn't go off all the same because it wasn't mixed properly. We had a old drill press. We put an egg beater in it instead of a drill bit, and we had a bucket. We'd put your arm around it, and the other hand you'd pull the drill bit down there and mix it up, but it didn't really mix it up completely. So the foam didn't really work. It had big blotches in it, like a waffle that didn't get to the end of the mold, the waffle iron. And so Hobie got mad because he was trying to sell it to Velzy, and Velzy was calling it all kinds of funny names and putting it down. So finally he gave it to Grubby and said, go call it Clark Foam, call it whatever you want. I'll just give it to you. And so that's how that
And the rest, yeah, it's surf history. It's unbelievable the things we take for granted. So I want to, I'd love to bring Pat. I'd love to. Don't talk to Pat.
I
Okay.
can cheer for I'm just making everybody.
Yeah. You're so yogaed out right now, Pat. You might
I'm
have a
the young
mic.
kid in
There you
this
go.
group.
You have a
That's
mic.
great.
Yeah. So I'd love to get initially kind of your reaction when you first saw Endless Summer, and then we touched on it a little bit, or Dana, when he interviewed you in the film, touched on that reaction of being part of Endless Summer too, and what at the time did you understand like the gravity and the relevance of having your shoulder tapped in that way?
Well, I grew up in Chicago, so the first surf movie I ever saw was The Endless Summer. And I think it was like required viewing from any kid from Chicago. You move to California, you're like, okay, dude, you got to watch this. And so it was, again, I lived probably 10 minutes outside the city, so anything that looked like surfing was so foreign to me. And it just looked like, again, winters in Chicago, and then all of a sudden I'm on the beach in California, and I'm watching surf movies, and I'm like, okay, this is my life. This is pretty freaking good.
So how old were you, like the early Salt Creek days, like when you came?
I moved when I was 12.
12, okay.
So, yeah, sort of late. Like, kids are pro surfers at 12 now. Yeah, and so, The Endless Summer was the movie that I watched to, explore surfing. It was everything. It was, and what I would say is, I've always thought about, for kids, why I think surfing was so exciting to me is that I grew up playing team sports, and that's what you do as certainly in the Midwest. It was the first time that I actually had independence. I could, wake up in the morning and I could piss off. I could do anything I wanted because this thing that I love to do, I could do on my own. It's better with some friends, but I could actually, be in the water at 5 in the morning and come home in the dark, and I didn't have to ask for permission. That was the greatest thing about it. And when I saw The Endless Summer and traveling, and it was the thing that really got me excited, and listening to Dick's stories, I could sit there all night because it's like...
Oh, There's chapters that.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think we all have that, like, and not everybody does it. That's what's so interesting, and that's why the Endless Summer, and that's why Bruce's films meant so much to people, was because we all have that inside us. We all want to travel, but for some of us, we just find other things and whatever, and it's that sort of emotional connection to what we want to do.
And did you experience that with Bruce? I love that the wingnut, like when he brought up the fact that Bruce said, "Hey, take a second. Look what's behind you. Breathe it in." Like, did you like what was your interaction with Bruce while shooting that, and kind of your takeaways from it?
So I was a little shit kid. Like I was such a young.
Still are.
Still am. Same kid. Okay. Same kid. Just a little older and wrinkles. But I was so horny to surf every day. I didn't really pay attention to much anything else.
There's never anybody on the planet that's ever wanted to get in the water more than Pat O'Connell.
It doesn't matter how shitty it is either. I've seen him at like
the most vile, leech-infested, hepatitis water. He's going, you know what? I think it's a wave right there. You know, and like literally, Dad would get mad. You go, can I jump in right now? And I go, hey, Pat's gonna jump in the water. And he goes, what the fuck? His hair's gonna be all wet for this shot. And Pat was so pumped. I gotta say about you, my friend, he plays himself off for being like, I'm Pat, huh? And he's the funniest guy, the sweetest guy. What you see is what you get. But on the other hand, we're in France. There's a scene in France with Tom Curran in Endless Summer 2. And Mike Graber, who's a great cameraman and a wonderful guy, a great mountain climber. And so Graber and I are eating dinner, and Pat comes in and plops down. And he's like 19. And he goes, woof. And he goes, I just got the phone. I finally got my first house. Graber's like 40. I'm in my 30s. We're both like, look. He goes, you know what that feeling's like, guys, all right? And then we're going like, no. But that's Pat. Like, he kept his money. He's as sharp as hell. And Pat O'Connell is one of the... It's true. Because I remember we didn't tell you because we didn't want to give you the satisfaction. We were like, oh, yeah, hell yeah. And he left. And
We've all been there, Pat, yeah.
And Graber tells me reluctantly, he goes, I've never really purchased a house yet. And I went, yeah, me neither up to now. I mean, what the fuck? That kid's 19. Who the hell gave him a loan? Yeah. That's our man, Pat, right there.
But so best experience from Endless Summer 2, though. I know it's been so many years now, Pat. Like, what's thinking back on it?
I mean, look, the whole thing was obviously amazing, but I think for me is like we'd sit down at dinner and it was such a diverse group of people. And Dana brought up Mike Graber. It was Mike Hoover, Beverly Johnson, all these really interesting people. And they're climbers, yeah. And we would talk about they spent time, climbing Everest, and they spent time covering the Afghan wars, like with Dan Rather, and I mean these really, really, like truly interesting people. And so, the surf stuff would sort of dissipate very fast, and we'd sit there and just talk about, very real things. And for such a young kid, like I was just like, the ocean was sort of everything, and then all of a sudden you'd sit down at dinner and it was like just would disappear. And those to me were like the kind of eye-opening, just those are and I think for all of us, like when you go on a surf trip, like as soon as the day of waves finish and you have a beer and you're sitting there talking, and that's kind of the thing you remember. The waves are like, oh, I remember that great wave or whatever, but it's that bonding that is the thing you remember, I guess.
And I would imagine, too, making this film with your father, I think that the bonding on a family level was probably the top. Yeah.
I mean, that was the point of the film. I mean, there's been a lot of things said. Dick probably invented them. Which actually...
He's a master of lexicon.
Dick has invented them. I didn't mean to sound cavalier about that. But, yeah, I mean, a surf thing's always about stories, right? I mean, is Mr. McGivray here? Is Gregor? He's right there.
Right
I
there.
thought that was you.
Yeah?
But here's a gentleman right here that's done many stories on many places, but it's about the human
In particular,
experience.
5 summer stories, actually.
Well, he did 5, and he did 5 plus 4, and
Yeah.
5 plus 2.6.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just teasing you. But you know, I mean, that's always the most interesting thing. I mean, it's great when you can do something sexy, because you got waves and surfers, and they look good, and everybody looks good. But it's about the stories, and you know, the older you get, the more you go, well, these stories are pretty good. They might last even if the people aren't that sexy anymore, you know? I mean, Dick, we did an interview. I'm doing a new project, and we interviewed Dick, and he talked for 2 hours, and the whole crew was probably, you know, under
30.
under 30, young guys, and they're all just going, that guy's unbelievable.
I want to
You
party
know,
with that guy.
Yeah.
I think there
Yeah,
should
and
be a
I mean, I
class
think
in
that's-
school.
That's the universal thing, and that's the universal, and Greg talks really well. We did an interview with him too, and just about why that is. I mean, there's a storytelling element to all this. That's why it's important. It's not the NFL.
Well,
Nobody's getting $10 billion. I mean, who
No,
cares?
but it's of all the films that we've watched this week, it really gets down to the friendships that you make, and that's what it comes down to. And when I hear you speak, Dick, about the things you went through, and how the cowboy days of what you experienced. I'm like, I can't imagine going through those kind of moments with the friends that I have. Like,
Well, you're alone. It is lonely when you're doing that by yourself. But you know, it's a great maturing. You meet people and you learn so much. I didn't learn anything in school. I went 6 years to college, but I nothing. But when you take a
And he
trip
became
like
a
that,
sophomore after those 6 years.
you know, you really learn from it.
teacher's assistant.
So it's a great experience, and you learned that by sitting around with older guys telling the stories. You know, it's all passing it along, and I think that's what's so important. And that's why I started Surfing Heritage Foundation, was just to preserve all that. I think this is 100 years from now. It's not only the surfboards that we rode along the line, how they evolved, but it's the stories, the culture that we had such an impact on society in general. I mean, the terminology, the clothes, the music, all of that was small little tribes, I call them, that got together and created this whole monster industry. And those stories are what's so important, to pass those along so others can learn from that and take it to the next level.
And it moves at such a rapid pace now
Fast.
compared to. I mean, it was.
Well,
yeah.
in my lifetime, it's come from, you know, I grew up here in the Depression, and guys would drive a dump truck with a suit and tie on. I mean, the lifestyle, the culture, the clothes was so different from when I was a kid till now. You know, it goes by so quick, and it happens in such a short amount of time, it seems like. It's just mind-boggling to see how much it's changed in a short time, a relatively short time.
I love to hear that you're riding moto. That's really, really exciting. I want to know, Troy, can we get Dick like a signature helmet?
Whatever he needs.
Okay. I'd love to. Yeah.
So today, I came here today, and they gave me a room, and
What kind of
we go
bikes
down to
are
the
you riding?
room, and somebody sends a text. There's somebody sitting in the room, my daughter's sitting there, and they go, Troy Lee's here, he has something for you. Troy, who does all I mean, Troy's bigger than all of us put together, except for Dick. And Greg.
Dick's big. Dick's big.
And maybe Ellie. The 3 people. And he brought me the most beautiful painting of my dad that he did for free. Isn't that, I mean, and the point was, I'm not trying to show off, but I mean, that's the kind of people we're talking about. So, I mean, if you're going to make a movie, you better make a movie about those kind of people. So, anyways.
Well done. So now that some of the dust has settled through the process of making this film. Where do you see yourself? Yeah.
Sitting next to you right now.
Oh, geez. Wow. Holy low points. Yeah.
Okay.
No, but in terms of, obviously, this was a film that I know that kind of sat on the shelf, like you said. There was a little bit, it was like kind of start and stop. But now you're, okay, so the film's getting out there and it's starting to, get eyes on it. But, for Dana Brown, like moving forward, is there a space or something you want to, like,
Yeah, well,
it sounds like you're doing something a little with the WSL. Is that on the down low? Can we?
yeah.
Okay.
Are we?
Permission to talk about that?
He's the commissioner.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure.
The Comish. Yeah.
We're doing like a history of surfing thing about the Dana Point Mafia. That's why I talked to Dick and stuff, and we're going to do a few more of those. So like it's not history. Hopefully it's fun like that one, but a little more broad and a little more about history. I don't know how Pat's involved. I don't like Pat.
Right? I hear the same thing from
I know,
a lot of people.
right?
It's crazy.
Because he's all like funny and nice.
Like,
and
oh,
then
so kooky.
you get to know him, and it's like steals your girlfriend. And
Wait, so what is that? What is that? I've never heard of the Dana Point Mafia.
Never heard of that?
No, I want
No,
I love hearing stories about
it-
early Killer Dana.
it's Grubby and Hobie and
Oh,
all these
that-
guys
oh, that-
that
yes,
lived,
yes,
all
that-
these
that
guys
collective.
in Minos and all
Yeah.
these guys.
Every time I look at if I'm surfing the fingers on a good day,
Yeah, yeah.
like I look up at
It's-
the A-frame and
It's
I'm
just about the post.
wait. There's no waves there. By the way, there's no waves still.
Well, it really started.
That's a Donovan
Really,
thing.
is
That's a
there any
Donovan
place
thing.
down here you got to hide anymore? I mean, doesn't anybody know that?
The way it really started, though, was Severson, John was a teacher in San Clemente, and he started making Surfer Magazine in Dana Point. Hobie was making surfboards, and Bruce had moved from Long Beach to Dana Point, was making movies there. So Bruce would use the Hobie surfboards in the movies. Severson would use Hobie boards in the magazine. And so Greg Knoll and Dewey Weber and Bing and all the guys in South Bay were bummed out because the power of the media, which we know today how it is, but in those days it was Surfer Magazine and your dad's movies, and Hobie was right in the middle of it, and so you didn't see Jacobs and Velzy boards in any of those movies at first, and that's why they started calling us the Mafia.
It's not exactly what the show's about.
But it was just, and then what happened, the fun part of it all, and I had 22 stores, so where the rest of the guys just had an individual store, we had 20 Hobie stores in Hawaii and all over Florida and here. So it just grew, and then Greg Knoll got real cocky and he had a new factory in South Bay, and his big mistake, and he was, well, surfers never had a pair of hard shoes or ties or a suit anyway. So this was a formal event that Greg Knoll promoted, and he invited all the guys from South Bay, but he didn't invite any of the Dana Point guys. And his big mistake was having Hevs McClellan from Laguna be the MC. And so Hevs was my partner in the liquor store and a couple other things. So he told me.
Wait, you're your partner in Spigot?
Yeah.
I love that you own. I have no idea. You own Spigot
I
right
own
next
the
to the
Spigot.
Seahorse. Okay. Yeah, that's
And Hevs ran it. So Hevs called me up and he says, Greg Knoll's having this big party, and you're not supposed to know, but you could turn up and nobody will claim that we told you. So we got in a bus in Dana Point, and the party was at 6 at night. We got in a bus at 10 o'clock in front of Munoz's house, and we had 3 kegs of beer, and we stopped at every bar between here and Hermosa.
You were spring breaking before there was spring break. My gosh.
And when we got there, they had this table as long as this room filled with food, big bowls, and Mike Stang, who was Greg Knoll's best friend and a really good pal of mine. I surfed with him in Hawaii a lot. And we started a food fight right away, and we came in mafia clothes. We all grew little mustaches, and we had violin cases with squirt guns. There were machine guns.
This is thought out. This is
Oh,
thought
it was
out.
bad. Well, there's pictures of all that in the magazine.
Yeah.
that John published, and we threw food at Greg Knoll, and he's usually the guy that likes to screw up everything, and this was the one time in his life he wanted to be formal and really cool, and we busted the whole thing. And it was
You
really
busted the
great.
bull's balls, is what you did.
It was great.
Okay.
Just so the audience knows, that's a little part of the story.
Yeah, it
It's
is a
really
little
about
part.
these
I'm
guys.
not telling you any of the facts.
These guys that were friends. No, he's telling you total facts about that night. But this is about a group of guys that after the Duke, after World War II, there's more leisure time, that would change everything, that would give Greg 2 Oscar nominations, that would let me have this job, that would let Pat be sitting there. And it's just about this weird idea that in this little group, these guys that all knew each other, the Hoffmans that would supply all the fabrics to the fashion industry, Grubby Clark that would give all the foam to everything, Hobie Alter that would become between the manufacturing and sailing, my dad doing the film, John doing the thing. It's just this idea that these guys actually knew each other with an 8-mile stretch. You know, in the North Shore, there's this 6-mile miracle, however they want to judge that, whatever breaks. It is a miracle because you go there and you go, this is unbelievable. There's so much surf here. And there was a time here that happened. So it's an examination of that. That's what it is. And that story's in there. But I just want you to know, watch the show because it's not just that story.
Well, speaking of that,
Because he tells it better than we got it. So Luke, get on that right now.
in the first edition, Dana, that I saw of your movie, like 6-8 months ago, as I remember, you had an interview with Greg Knoll, and did you cut that out? Because
You can't cut Greg Knoll out. We all know that because Greg will know you cut him out.
yeah, he'll know in a minute.
Yeah, I love Greg Knoll.
So I guess we can look forward to seeing this. Is this going to be a WSL series, or is it like what?
I didn't know we were partners.
Well,
Exegel right
Why
now.
did? But it sounded
That
like
and the 2020 season will come out at the same time.
wow,
What?
same. It's not-
Oh, you'll be in a contest while
No.
the movie.
no,
Perfect.
it made it sound like you guys. It was a
No,
kind of a
we love
collab.
each other.
Yeah.
We're in
We have
love
a-
with each other.
Okay.
So we'll let our partners
Well,
know.
we look forward to that, and obviously, I think any more Dick Metz stories, we're down to listen to. But I know it's getting kind of late. We're running over our time. We do have a curfew here, but I want to thank you, Dana, from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for sharing your film. How dare you get me crying up here? It wasn't like, yeah, I loved your dad. He was such an incredible person. So thank you. You guys, before I'd be remiss too if we didn't bring up Ben Klassen, Ben Warner, and Enoch Harris, and we can just, yep. But applause for them, and then we can let, yeah. Yeah, Enoch, I'll let you guys just say some words, little closing. Don't worry, it's COVID free.
Wow. To follow that, huh? Yeah. Thank you all for being here and sharing your story with everybody else that's here. It's been an amazing 3 days, and it wouldn't be possible without the support of our volunteers, without the support of our sponsors, thank you, without the hard work and dedication of a few people, including my wife, Kirsten. Our son Tate. All the filmmakers, directors, athletes, producers. Wow. We had over 54 films this year. We watched over 300 films to get to where we are this week. Because of COVID, we're actually really excited to launch a virtual component of the festival that starts tomorrow, because we weren't able to include as many people as we had last year at this event, and we wanted to make it available around the world from the comfort and safety of people's home. So we're really excited about that. So it's kind of the next step for us as we grow, and this being our second year. We have a long vision of building this as a community event every November. We've realized that we can have a positive impact on the local businesses, and we hope to continue to support the storytellers and the future storytellers for years to come.
And really the environment and just storytelling and really being stewards of our environment and protecting the places that we love, but equally enjoying them is key to our future. And really, our goal is to inspire the next generation of kids and stewardship of taking care of the places we love so much. So, that is really the ethos of our film festival, is like protect to enjoy. Like, we want to protect the places, but we want to enjoy them equally. So thank you all for supporting us over these last 3 days. Can't thank you enough for coming out and supporting. And, we look forward to, like Ben said, a long future here in Laguna Beach and really inspiring people about the environment and taking care of the places that we love.
I just want to add one more thing, sorry. The ranch has been incredible this week. So thank you, Kurt, and your staff, and for being, working so hard. Some of you hopefully were here on our opening night on Thursday on the first fairway, which was a vision we had years ago, and it was awesome. And it was a little cold, but we're building momentum, and it's because of great partners like the ranch and all of you for supporting us. So thank you.
Yeah.
All right, you guys, Ben, and thank you so much. Okay, or not. There we go. Okay, and one big last round of applause, you guys. Dana Brown, Dick Metz, Troy Lee, Pat O'Connell. You guys, thank you so much for the discussion, and let's hopefully wind this thing down safely, but with multiple libations. Thank you so much, everybody.